oppositions. Corruption is merely one symptom of these structural relationships rather than being a driving factor. How it play a pivotal role in any country, the nature of political finance is an important determinant of structure of political competition. The structure of political competition can be studied around three axes: institutional, organizational, and ideological. First one, institutional, the regulation of competition between ruling and opposition party. Organizational, the regulation of competition within a party. And ideologically, the role of idea in determining competition between parties. All the three axes of political competition are substantially influenced by the nature of political finance. One, the degree of transparency of political funding inform the efficacy of institutional safeguards. For example, the inherent opacity of electoral bond render of power of Elections Commission of India irrelevant in terms of ensuring a level playing field. Meanwhile, the information asymmetry between the ruling and opposition party gnaws at the fairness of electoral process. Second, the extent to which political funding is centralized within a party determines whether power in party is drawn from organizational structure or exercised in a personalized manner. For example, memberships funded parties such as the Dravida Munnetra Kadgam and the Bahujan Samaj Party of an earlier era were highly organized party where leaders wielded power in responsive, programmatic manner. Similarly, we can chart the transformation of the Labour Party in the United Kingdom over the course of 20th century from an organizationally driven mass party a centralized elite party as, among other factors, the balance of party funding shifted from labor union to corporate houses. Third, the financing also sorry the political financing regime also shaped the role of idea in grounding political competition. Admittedly, this relationship can proceed in varied way according to the contingencies of different political content. But as a general matter, when political finance is anchored to narrow concentration of economic capital, the ideological basis of political competition tends to become severely corroded, bound at advantage to ruling party. Having constructed this framework of any analysis, let us come back to the issue of electoral bonds. How do we expect the rise of electoral bonds as a major source of political finance to affect the prevailing pattern of political competition? At the outset of one must note the remarkable speed with which electoral bonds have colonized at least the declared sphere to political funding within 2 years of its introduction. Electoral bonds were said to cover 52% of the total income of national party and 53% of total income of regional parties. According to the analysis by Association for Democratic Reforms, there are two silent features of electoral bonds we must consider to gauge its impact on political competition. One, the design of electoral bonds, perhaps more than any other instrument of political finance, leans to the advantage of ruling party. It is no surprising that the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party in 2019-20 got over 75% of the total electoral bond sold as opposed to the merged 9% share of the Congress, according to the Election Commission of India data. As the political scientist Milan Vaishnav has written electoral bonds invert the concept of transparency and openness in political funding, whereby only the government and presumably the ruling party have access to the transaction trail, the information asymmetry, and barrier to institutional scrutiny, thus created considerably skews the channel of electoral bond toward the ruling party. Second, electoral bonds centralize political funding toward the national unit of political party, further entrenching the leverage of national leadership over the state and local units. As a reply to right right to information's RTI query revealed, but out of the rupees 5,851 crore of electoral bonds sold in 2018-19, 80% of the bonds were redeemed in Delhi. Electoral bonds were introduced alongside significant legal amendments such as removal of erstwhile limit 7.5% of net profit on corporate donations. These changes in the legal architecture of political finance enable the prospect of an alliance of national political elite and big business conglomerates, squeezing the space for both local elite and regional capital. These two features of electoral bond signal an important break, harking back to another turning point in the history of political finance brought under the Indira Gandhi regime. As Mr. Vaishnava and Devesh Kapoor have written in their book Cost of Democracy, Political Finance in India, Indira Gandhi banned corporate donation in 1969 in order to limit the growth of the Swatantra Party in the Jana Sangha, who she feared were increasingly attracting corporate backers. These changes in political funding melded were well with her wider strategy to tightening the grip of state and hence the ruling party over big business through the project of dialing dialing up license, control and nationalization of key industries. At the same time, the Indira Gandhi regime also cultivated personalized relationship with big business elite in order to marginalize the regional strongmen which had till then controlled the organizational structure of the Congress party. Centralization of power. Yet, the centralization of political power seems even more commanding in the present time. Even as Indira Gandhi completely subordinated the Congress elite in the Hindu speaking states, she allowed a measure of autonomy to leaders such as Yashwantrao B. Chauhan in Maharashtra and D. Devraj Woods in Karnataka, who were backed by important sources of regional capital. Similarly, while Rajiv Gandhi changed chief minister in Uttar Pradesh on him, he coaxed a rebellious Sharad Pawar back into the party fold. Today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi commands unquestionable authority even in these states, sidelining B.S. Yediyurappa from the Karnataka unit and coercing Devendra Fadnavis into accepting a secondary role in the Maharashtra government without provoking a spec of protest. Meanwhile, the Bharatiya Janata Party now possesses the autonomy to bring measures such as the demonetization and goods and service tax, that means GST, that hurt its traditional backer, small business and trading caste because they now contribute an insignificant speck to its political treasury. To be sure, the new political financing regime only built on the political pathologies already prevalent in our system. Crumbling organizations, political centralization of business politics compact fueled by rent seeking and cronyism rather than creating them from scratch. Even so, it is important that independent institutions such as ECI and the Supreme Court of India step in to layer the seeming black hole of electoral bond with minimum level of institutional safeguard. Let this reform of political finance goes down in history as a significant marker in our story of democratic decline.